Hey guys, I'm Ivory. Happy New Year. Today's video is going to be a 2-day wear test on the NYX Bare With Me Blur Tint Foundation. I'll be showing you how this applies initially on my face as well as checking in throughout the days to show you how it wears. Just to clarify, because I get this comment time and time again, I am not wearing the foundation for 2 days straight. It's not going to be 48 hours straight. It's going to be a 10-hour day today and then a 10-hour day tomorrow. So if I see that comment, I know you didn't really watch the video. And for anyone that's new, I have oily and acne prone skin, so my wear tests are catered towards people with similar skin types. And if you find that this review is helpful, I will link a playlist of all the other foundations I've done a review on if you want to go down that rabbit hole. All right, so I have already cleansed and moisturized my face. I'm gonna go in with primer. I'll only be applying primer to half my face today to see if primer even makes a difference. I'm going in with the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer, and then on one side of my face, I'm gonna apply the foundation with a brush. Then the other side, I'm gonna use a sponge just to see how the foundation applies with two very common applicators. The foundation brush that I'm using today is the Sigma Round Kabuki, which is the F82, and then the sponge that I'm using is the Juno & Co. Microfiber Sponge. The foundation is a hydrating, medium buildable coverage and leaves the skin with a smooth, healthy looking and visibly brighter appearance. It claims to help control shine all day, delivers up to 16 hours of comfortable transfer and fade resistant wear. It's packed with skincare ingredients like glycerin, matcha, and niacinamide. It's vegan, cruelty free. Product contains 1.01 fluid ounces and retails for $14. Okay, so this is one layer foundation. The shade that I'm using is 11 medium neutral, which I think is a really good shade match for me. I think I could get away with either 10 or 9. I tried 9 before and I ended up returning it for this one. They didn't have 10 at my Ulta, so I don't really know how that looked on me, but the shade 9 was just a hair too light for me. I always like to go a little bit darker than lighter just because, first of all, my body is darker than my face, and also I feel like when the foundation is even just a little bit too light, it just shows all the wear sooner than if it was darker. But I'm pretty happy with shade 11. I think this is a good match. The finish of this is pretty matte. It's not like a dead matte, it's like a satin matte. Is it supposed to be like that? Oh yeah, it says medium coverage, matte, blurred finish. Okay, I didn't read that. So yeah, I would agree with that. The coverage of it being medium, it's one layer, so I would say like right now this is a light medium. You know, you could still see imperfections coming through. Depending on the foundation and the coverage it gives me, I can get away sometimes with one layer, but it's not a deal breaker for me. But it is very common that I often have to go in with a second layer. If I have to go in with a third layer of foundation, it's kind of a deal breaker for me. I don't have time for that, and I feel like I waste more product than I would like to. And as far as brush versus sponge, usually there's a really clear winner, but in this case, I feel like they're the same. I feel like they gave me the exact same coverage, so I think you're good either way. I'm gonna go ahead and go in with a second layer. All right, so this is the second layer, and I feel like now I can see that the sponge side gives me just a little bit more coverage. The easiest place to tell is the cheeks because I have a lot of discoloration there. I just see more of it peeking through on the brush side than I do on the sponge side. The coverage I would say right now is a medium just because it covers a good amount, but not everything. There's still a little bit coming through, but it covers a decent amount. I also felt like the brush side on the second layer came off a little bit patchy in this area. As I was blending it in, it was like taking away parts of the first layer, so it was coming through. So then I would try to, you know, like stipple on the foundation. I don't know, it was like coming off in weird bunches. I mean, I got it to be fully covered, but it wasn't as effortless as the sponge side. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my face. All of the products that I use are not new. I make sure that when I do wear tests, the foundation is the only thing new that I add into the rotation. I don't want to have to second guess like, oh, maybe it was my new concealer, or maybe it's because I used new primer. I eliminate all those factors so that if this foundation doesn't work and all the other products I know are good and work well on me, then we know what the problem is. And of course, all of the products that I use will be listed in my description box below, along with this foundation and all the shades that I use. I feel like I'm pretty good. Not I feel, I am. I'm very good about listing all the products that I use as well as the shades that I use, because I get that comment all the time, like, what shade are you using? One thing I always appreciate is when beauty YouTubers list the products and the shades, and specifically in the order that they say the product. I always really appreciate that. So I am always very mindful about doing that on my own videos. And with it being January 1st today, I did make a couple resolutions for this year. The first one being very unoriginal, but it is a fitness goal. I have been belly aching about my weight for a long time. And it's so sad because there are very few seldom times in my life where I look at a picture in that moment and think to myself, wow, I look really good. It's almost 95% of the time I would look at my photo and be like, wow, look at how big my arms are. Look at how, look how my face is, or look how big my thighs are. And now that I'm at the weight that I'm 160. I look back at the pictures when I was 140, 130, and 120. And I'm like, wow, I was really small. I can't believe during those moments, I was so unhappy with the way I looked. So I constantly go in limbo with like embracing the current me and also wanting to lose weight. So that's one of my resolutions. And then the other one was YouTube. I really want to be more frequent about filming and posting and maybe creating a schedule and film and dedicate time to create more videos. So that is a goal that I have set for myself. All right, I went ahead and did the rest of my makeup off camera because it was taking too long. Like I said, I'm going to be wearing this for 10 hours today. I'll check in around the halfway point to show you how it's wearing. Okay, so we are a little over 5 hours into the wear test. As far as primer versus no primer, I actually prefer the no primer side. Remember, the side with the mole has the primer. I can see right here around the lines where I make facial expressions, it's a lot more cracked on this side versus this side. I barely see any wear. There's just like a little bit of cracking, but it's not to the same degree as this side. And I see that consistently throughout all my problematic areas, which is usually my mouth region and the T-zone. If you look at my T-zone here where you can see I scrunch and the foundation collects, on this side, there are so many more horizontal lines than on this side. This side looks a lot more smoother. From a far away distance, it may not be as noticeable, but when I get up close is when I see these little details. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that primer isn't really necessary for this foundation because I actually really like the way that it's wearing on the no primer side. I had to scratch at my nose, so a little bit of the foundation came off, but everywhere else looks really good. At the top of my nose is where I often see it's starting to separate. That hasn't, sorry, I just touched it. That hasn't really happened yet. I do see a little bit of the foundation wearing off around my upper lip. I think it's pretty common that a lot of women get, you know, peach fuzz on their upper lip. I did go ahead and remove the hair before I apply the foundation, but you could see like those little dots where each follicle is. I can see on both sides that that is happening where you see the dots. So I would say maybe this area and a little bit here is okay, and then everywhere else is pretty great. As far as oiliness, I'm not that oily. I feel like this is a nice dewy shine, although I will say that I think over time this foundation oxidized quite a bit because on the first layer I felt like it was a pretty good match. The second layer I noticed that it was kind of dark for my skin, and then now I can see like a very clear difference between my neck and my face. So just be careful, that seems to oxidize a little bit. I am gonna go ahead and blot. The blotting sheets that I'm using are discontinued, but I'll link an alternative that I actually prefer in my description box. All right, so I went ahead and I blotted. I do feel like this foundation doesn't do that great with blotting. On my nose area, it lifted the foundation quite a bit. You could see like this side of my nose is totally bare, like that's just my skin. It's mostly just the nose area where I can see it. Everywhere else seems to be okay, so maybe you want to avoid everywhere but the nose area. But for me, like this area is quite oily. I don't know. So just be careful when you blot, I guess, with this foundation. All right, that is it for this check-in. I will come back at the 10-hour mark to give you my final thoughts for day one. All right, we have reached the 10-hour mark. The only thing that's really changed is that the areas where I was starting to see wear and like the foundation was cracking and separating, it's more prominent now. For example, in between my eyebrows, I see lots of settling in this region. My nose actually doesn't look too bad. I think that if I didn't blot in the first place, this would still look pretty good. So that's something that I'll keep in mind for tomorrow. My upper lip on both sides is not great. You can see all the little dots of missing foundation. This right here is a big pet peeve of mine. There's quite a bit of cracking and separating happening on my chin as well. More so on this side, the side with the primer, you can see right here in this region where the foundation is just breaking up. The center of the face is the main area that I really focus on because everywhere else looks good to me. So things to know for tomorrow: 1, I'm gonna try not blotting. 2, primer that I used didn't help the foundation stay on longer, and in fact it did the opposite and made it break down quicker, it seems. I could do half primer again tomorrow with a different primer to see if I get a different outcome with a different primer, so we'll see how I'm feeling tomorrow. As far as oiliness, I don't feel like it looks super oily on me, but the things that I'm not loving is the way it breaks down on my problematic areas. But as of today, my thoughts are, it's okay, but I need more time with this before I make a solid opinion. That is it for day 1. See you tomorrow. Good morning. It is day 2 of the wear test. After thinking about what I wanted to do to test the foundation today, I decided that I'm gonna do half the face with powder underneath, and then the other half I'm just gonna leave it alone and apply the foundation straight on top of it. I'm gonna go in with some loose setting powder. This is the Dermablend illuminating powder in banana. And I'm gonna apply a really thin layer to the center of my face. Thin being the key word, because if you add too much or you don't press it in hard enough, when you add foundation on top, it can make the foundation look really textured. Less is more in this case if you're just starting out with trying this technique. And essentially what it does is it helps prolong the oils from coming through. In a lot of cases, not all cases, but I have found that it does help some of the time. But if the foundation is kind of good on its own, then sometimes I don't notice a difference. And it goes the other way too. If the foundation's just really bad and doesn't work for me, then having powder underneath sometimes won't make a difference. So it's just case by case. And since I did find that the sponge gave me a little bit more coverage, I'm gonna go ahead and use a sponge for my whole face today. So this is 1 layer of foundation. I think I'm gonna leave it today and just do the 1. In general, at least for me, the less layers you have, the better that the foundation is gonna wear. And I'm also gonna be really minimal with my makeup. Yesterday I had concealer here and here. Today, I'm just gonna leave it bare. I'm only gonna do the under eye because I wanna see how the foundation looks without any concealer on top. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my makeup. I'm not using any different products that I did on day 1. Just like yesterday, I'm gonna wear this for 10 hours. I'm gonna try and check in around the halfway point. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be home, so I'll try my best. But I will check in a little bit to show you how it's wearing today. It is a little over the 7-hour mark, and I think this is gonna be my final check-in as well as my final thoughts. Oil-wise, it's all right. It looks the oiliest in the center of my face, and it feels the oiliest there too, because it feels heavier in this region. But everywhere else I would say looks all right, and it's holding together pretty well too everywhere else. As far as having the powder underneath the foundation, I think it did help. The areas where this foundation is cracking, it's less noticeable on this side. So I do think that it's helping keep the foundation together a little bit longer. Just like yesterday where the foundation collects in my fine lines, it's happening a lot less on this side, and same thing down here. There's cracking down here, and the cracking is less noticeable than on this side. So I think it makes a difference in terms of making it stay better longer, but in terms of oil production, I think whether you powder or not, there's not going to be a noticeable difference. It looks like the same amount of oil is distributed on both sides of my face. I'm also noticing, just like yesterday, those little dots happening on my upper lip, and that is something that does bother me. I'm gonna go ahead and blot everywhere except my nose to see if that helps the situation at all. Okay, so now that everywhere except my nose is matte again, hopefully you can see more clearly how it's wearing on me, how it settles in my fine lines. I'm not really loving how it's wearing in the center of my face. And don't forget, I have only 1 layer of foundation on right now, and I don't even have concealer in these regions. So this is just what the foundation looks like alone. All right, so my final thoughts. First of all, if you use me as a shade reference, and we are often foundation twins, I think I would have done 10. Like I said, they didn't have it at my Ulta, but 9 was just a hair too light. I could have probably gotten away with it, but for my preferences, it seemed too light. So I would go with a 10 if you can find it, because the way that it oxidized, it got kind of orange on me, and then there was like a clear disconnect between the rest of my body and my face. So there's that. And some areas of my face, like my cheeks and my forehead, I really like the way that this wears. It looks really smooth. I have no complaints. The center of my face is where things start to get dicey. I like that my nose, albeit shiny, is not separating at all, but the other areas like my upper lip, the chin, in between my eyebrows, the way the makeup settles there, it adds a lot more texture to those areas versus smoothing things over. And I already have enough texture as it is with my acne and my acne scars. I don't need to be adding onto it. So I don't love that. Would I recommend this? It's hard for me to say because there are some things I like about it, but the fact that I'm hesitant about saying yes means that I should probably say no. So I'm gonna go ahead and say pass on this one. And especially since it's laying like this with one layer of foundation and not even concealer on top of it, it does not sit well with me. So unfortunately, I don't think I'll be recommending this. Super disappointed because I always want my foundations to work. I love foundations and it's always very exciting when a good foundation joins my collection. Unfortunately, this one will not be. But I hope this review was helpful, insightful, or at least entertaining. And if it was, don't forget to like this video and feel free to comment down below what other types of videos you'd like to see from me. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I'd love to see you come back. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one.